We're live.
So I show you
Woodhull!
postcards. All right. So in the order of travel.
Ooh.
Jason says he sees a person going, oh!
I can see it a little bit.
And then we've got Farmer Maggot's place.
Yes.
Yes. And I'm particularly pleased.
Ooh, nice. I remember last time you showed me that you weren't quite happy with it yet, but I think it was the background like around the fireplace that you changed.
Yeah, I changed all of that into a much more stylized one. And look how pretty the texture turned out behind the flames.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so pretty. Okay, so there's that. Do-de-do-de. Do-de-do. And we've seen this?
Yes, yes.
Yes. But you probably have not seen this.
Ooh, no, you were working on that one last time. Oh, that looks so cool. I love the texture in the sky.
Yeah, that really worked out. I just kind of slapped it with the paintbrush until it looked right. I also did not intentionally make this really cute little outcropping there that just sort of happened.
It works.
It works so well. I love it when watercolors do my job for me. Rivendell.
Rivendell. Smells like elves.
Oh, yeah. And Diishawan. I darkened it up a lot. The original is much paler gray all over, but I was like, no, I need it to be like nighttime. And I don't have the money to afford that much, that opacity of watercolor, so we fucks with it in post.
Ooh, Holland Gate. I like the reflection.
Right? I didn't intend for the water to turn out that blue. Is it like in person it's a sort of bluish brown, but all of that went bye-bye with the print. So now it looks all pure and pristine, but you can see that there's ripples at least.
Mm-hmm. You can see that there's ripples, and it makes the like "don't touch the water" more ominous because the water looks perfectly normal.
Come on. And and I haven't put Khazad-dûm through post yet and Lothlorien, and now we're going to work on the Argonath. And thank you for looking. Where are we at with our boys?
Oh, Lord. I don't know. Let's see.
Right? I've got a mark. It's been a little while. Pale lights like eyes, but soon they flickered and vanished. Does that seem right?
Yes, that seems right. And then we're about to have a great description of A, being sick, and B, insomnia.
Yeah.
The hateful night passed slowly and reluctantly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Mood.
Yeah. Such daylight as followed was dim, for here as the mountain drew near the air was ever murky, while out from the dark tower there crept the veils of shadow that Sauron wove about himself. Frodo was lying on his back, not moving. Sam stood beside him, reluctant to speak, and yet knowing that the word now lay with him, he must set his master's will to work for another effort. At length, stooping and caressing Frodo's brow, he spoke in his ear. "Wake up, master," he said. "Time for another start." As if roused by a sudden bell, Frodo rose quickly and stood up and looked away southwards. But when his eyes beheld the mountain and the desert, he quailed again. "I can't manage it, Sam," he said. "It is such a weight to carry, such a weight." Sam knew before he spoke that it was vain, and that such words might do more harm than good, but in his pity he could not keep silent. Then let me carry it a bit for you, master, he said. You know I would, and gladly, as long as I have any strength. A wild light came into Frodo's eyes. Stand away! Don't touch me! He cried. It is mine, I say! Be off! His hand strayed to his sword hilt, but then quickly his voice changed. No, no, Sam, he said sadly. You must understand. It's my burden, and no one else can bear it. It is too late now, Sam, dear. You can't help me in that way again. I'm almost in its power now. I could not give it up. And if you tried to take it, I should go mad. Sam nodded. I understand, he said. But I've been thinking, Mr. Frodo, there's other things we might do without. Why not lighten the load a bit? We're going that way now, as straight as we can make it. He pointed to the mountain. It's no good taking anything we're not sure to need. Frodo looked again towards the mountain. No, he said. We shan't need much on that road, and at its end, nothing. Picking up his orc shield, he flung it away and threw his helmet after it. Then pulling off the grey cloak, he undid the heavy belt and let it fall to the ground, and the sheathed sword with it. The shreds of the black cloak he tore off and scattered. There, I'll be an orc no more, he cried, and I'll bear no weapon, fair or foul. Let them take me if they will. Sam did likewise and put aside his orc gear, and he took out all the things in his pack. Somehow each of them had become dear to him, if only because he had borne them so far with so much toil. Hardest of all it was to part with his cooking gear. Tears welled in his eyes at the thought of casting it away. Do you remember that bit of rabbit, Mr. Frodo, he said, in our place under the warm bank in Captain Faramir's country, the day I saw an Oliphant? No, I am afraid not, Sam, said Frodo. At least, I know that such things happen, but I cannot see them. No taste of food, no feel of water, no sound of wind, no memory of tree or grass or flower, no image of moon or star are left to me. I'm naked in the dark, Sam, and there is no veil between me and the wheel of fire. I begin to see it even with my waking eyes, and all else fades. Sam went to him and kissed his hand. And the sooner we're rid of it, the sooner to rest, he said haltingly, finding no better words to say. Talking won't mend nothing, he muttered to himself as he gathered up all the things that they had chosen to cast away. He was not willing to leave them lying open in the wilderness for any eyes to see. Stinker picked up that orc shirt, seemingly, and he isn't going to add a sword to it. His palms are bad enough when empty, and he isn't going to mess with my pants. It's like the most heart-wrenchingly Sam thing to do. Be like, yeah. He's not allowed to mess with my frying pans. Like, oh, sweetie. With that, he carried all the gear away to one of the many gaping fissures that scored the land and threw them in. The clatter of his precious pans as they fell down into the dark was like a death knell to his heart. He came back to Frodo, and then of his elven rope he cut a short piece to serve his master as a girdle and bind the grey cloak close about his waist. The rest he carefully coiled and put back in his pack. Beside that he kept only the remnants of their whey bread and the water bottle, and Sting still hanging by his belt, and hidden away in a pocket next to his breast the phial of Galadriel and the little box that she gave him for his own. Now at last they turned their faces to the mountain and set out, thinking no more of concealment, bending their weariness and falling wills only to the one task of going on. In the dimness of its dreary day, say that 3 times fast, few things, even in that land of vigilance, could have espied them, save from close at hand. Of all the slaves of the Dark Lord, only the Nazgul could have warned him of the peril that crept, small but indomitable, into the very heart of his guarded realm. But the Nazgul and their black wings were abroad on other errand. They were gathered far away, shadowing the march of the captains of the West, and thither the thought of the Dark Tower was turned. So it was a pretty good diversion, actually.
Right?
Like,
it freaking worked, guys. It worked perfectly.
Yep, as much as we've made fun of Imrahil and or movie Legolas, It did actually work exactly the way it needed to.
Well, we don't mock them for the concept, just the word, the diversion, the way they're like, let's spell this out for the audience who isn't following along.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yes, Leggy, that is what we're talking about at length.
Yes, I just said that.
Sure, honey.
That day, it seemed to Sam that his master had found some new strength, more than could be explained by the small lightening of the load that he had to carry. In the first marches, they went further and faster than he had hoped. The land was rough and hostile, and yet they made much progress, and ever the mountain drew nearer. But as the day wore on, and all too soon the dim light began to fail, Frodo stooped again and began to stagger, as if their renewed effort had squandered his remaining strength. At their last halt, he sank down and said, "I'm thirsty, Sam," and did not speak again. Sam gave him a mouthful of water. Only one more mouthful remained. He went without himself, and now as once more the night of Mordor closed over them, through all his thoughts there came the memory of water, and every brook or stream or fount that he had ever seen, under green willow shades or twinkling in the sun, danced and rippled for his torment behind the blindness of his eyes.
Okay, I've actually experienced that night and it fucking sucks.
Yeah.
After my surgery, when they wouldn't let me have anything to drink.
Yeah, I remember you telling me.
Yeah, like, yep, that Tolkien wrote it. It was fucking perfect. Thank you, sir, for expressing so simply the unexpressible.
Yeah. I imagine he had that night also.
Right?
He felt the cool mud about his toes as he paddled in the pool at Bywater with Jolly Cotton and Tom and Nibs and their sister Rosie. That was years ago, he sighed, and far away. The way back, if there is one, goes past the mountain. He could not sleep, and he held a debate with himself. "Well, come now, we've done better than you hoped," he said sturdily. "Began well, anyway. I reckon we crossed half the distance before we stopped. One more day will do it." And then he paused. "Don't be a fool, Sam Gamgee," came an answer in his own voice. "He won't go another day like that, if he moves at all. And you can't go on much longer giving him all the water and most of the food." "I can go on a good way, though, and I will." "Where to?" "To the mountain, of course." "What then, Sam Gamgee, what then? When you get there, what are you going to do? He won't be able to do anything for himself." To his dismay, Sam realized that he had not got an answer to this. He had no clear idea at all. Frodo had not spoken much to him of his errand, and Sam only knew vaguely that the ring had somehow to be put into the fire. "The cracks of doom," he muttered, the old name rising to his mind. "Well, if Master knows how to find them, I don't." "Well, there you are," came the answer. "It's all quite useless. He said so himself. You were a fool, going on hoping and toiling. You could have lain down and gone to sleep together days ago if you hadn't been so dogged. But you'll die just the same, or worse. You might just as well lie down now and give it up. You'll never get to the top anyway." "I'll get there if I leave everything but my bones behind," said Sam. "I'll carry Mr. Frodo up myself if it breaks my back and heart."
I'm sorry, that just makes me so sad and happy.
This part of the book is very emotional.
Yeah.
Stop arguing. At that moment, Sam felt a tremor in the ground beneath him, and he heard or sensed a deep remote rumble as of thunder imprisoned under the earth. There was a brief red flame that flickered under the clouds and died away. The mountain, too, slept uneasily. I also have always kind of thought that this conversation isn't actually between him and himself. It's between him and the influence of the ring.
Right? It could very easily be, yeah.
The ring's like, just give up. Just lay down and die. Let somebody else find me and take me to the last, 2 miles to the eye.
Yeah. That's That's the kicker, ain't it? Like, you're almost there, but this is the hardest fucking part.
Mm-hmm.
The ring's like,
And
no,
it,
no,
and
it's
it
just
goes
done.
both ways.
Yeah.
Like the hobbits are almost there, but this is the hardest part. But also the ring is almost to where it wants to be.
Right?
But this is the hardest part.
Like, come on. Come on, just stop. Just stop. Yeah.
Yeah. The last stage of their journey to Orodruin came, and it was a torment greater than Sam had ever thought that he could bear. He was in pain, and so parched that he could no longer swallow even a mouthful of food. It remained dark, not only because of the smokes of the mountain. There seemed to be a storm coming up, and away to the southeast there was a shimmer of lightnings under the black skies. Worst of all, the air was full of fumes. Breathing was painful and difficult, and a dizziness came on them so that they staggered and often fell. And yet their wills did not yield, and they struggled on. The mountain crept up ever nearer, until if they lifted their heavy heads it filled all their sight, looming vast before them, a huge mass of ash and slag and burned stone, out of which a sheer-sided cone was raised into the clouds. Before the day-long dusk ended and true night came again, they had crawled and stumbled to its very feet. With a gasp, Frodo cast himself on the ground, and Sam sat by him. To his surprise, he felt tired but lighter, and his head seemed clear again. No more debates disturbed his mind. See, he's refused the ring, and so it stopped trying.
Right?
Is one way to look at that.
Fuck yeah.
He knew all the arguments of despair, and would not listen to them. His will was set, and only death would break it. He felt no longer either desire or need of sleep, but rather of watchfulness. He knew that all the hazards and perils were now drawing together to a point. The next day would be a day of doom, a day of final effort or disaster, the last gasp. But when would it come? The night seemed endless and timeless, minute after minute falling dead and adding up to no passing hour, bringing no change.
That is also a mood.
Yeah.
Oof.
Oof. Yeah. Sam began to wonder if a second darkness had begun, and no day would ever reappear. At last he groped for Frodo's hand. It was cold and trembling. His master was shivering. I didn't ought to have left my blanket behind, muttered Sam, and lying down he tried to comfort Frodo with his arms and body. Then sleep took him, and the dim light of the last day of their quest found them side by side. The wind had fallen the day before as it shifted from the west, and now it came from the north and began to rise, and slowly the light of the unseen sun filtered down into the shadows where the hobbits lay. Which is an interesting turn of phrase when you compare it with in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie.
Oh, hey.
And now down into the shadows where the hobbits lie.
Interesting. I had never caught that before.
Me neither. Now for it. Now for the last gasp, said Sam as he struggled to his feet. He bent over Frodo, rousing him gently. Frodo groaned, but with a great effort of will he staggered up, and then he fell upon his knees again. He raised his eyes with difficulty to the dark slopes of Mount Doom towering above him, and then pitifully he began to crawl forward on his hands.
Oh, my boy.
I know!
He's just that fucking stubborn. Oh.
Yep. Right now it says Arognath, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
I would have caught it before I cut it, I'm sure. But
I'm sure you would, but
the earlier the better.
Yes. Sam looked at him and wept in his heart, but no tears came to his dry and stinging eyes. Oof, that's also painful to read.
Oh, yeah.
Oof. I said I'd carry him if it broke my back, he muttered, and I will. "Come, Mr. Frodo," he cried. "I can't carry it for you, but I can carry you and it as well. So up you get. Come on, Mr. Frodo, dear. Sam will give you a ride. Just tell him where to go, and he'll go." As Frodo clung upon his back, arms loosely about his neck, legs clasped firmly under his arms, Sam staggered to his feet. And then, to his amazement, he felt the burden light. He had feared that he would have barely enough strength to lift his master alone, and beyond that he had expected to share in the dreadful dragging weight of the accursed ring. But it was not so. Whether because Frodo was so worn by his long pains, wound of knife and venomous sting, and sorrow, fear and homeless wandering, or because some gift of final strength was given to him, Sam lifted Frodo with no more difficulty than if he were carrying a hobbit child piggyback in some romp on the lawns or hayfields of the Shire. He took a deep breath and started off. They had reached the mountain's foot on its northern side and a little to the westward. There its long grey slopes, though broken, were not sheer. Frodo did not speak, and so Sam struggled on as best he could, having no guidance but the will to climb as high as might be before his strength gave out and his will broke. On he toiled, up and up, turning this way and that to lessen the slope, often stumbling forward, and at the last crawling like a snail with a heavy burden on its back. When his will could drive him no further, and his limbs gave way, he stopped and laid his master gently down. Frodo opened his eyes and drew a breath. It was easier to breathe up here above the reeks that coiled and drifted down below. "Thank you, Sam," he said in a cracked whisper. "How far is there to go?" "I don't know," said Sam, "because I don't know where we're going." God bless Sam.
Right?
He looked back, and then he looked up, and he was amazed to see how far his last effort had brought him. The mountain, standing ominous and alone, had looked taller than it was. Sam saw now that it was less lofty than the high passes of the Ethel Duoth, which he and Frodo had scaled. The confused and tumbled shoulders of its great base rose for maybe 3,000 feet above the plain, and above them was reared half as high again its tall central cone, like a vast oyster chimney capped with a jagged crater. But already Sam was more than halfway up the base, and the plain of Gorgoroth was dim below him, wrapped in fume and shadow. As he looked up, he would have given a shout if his parched throat had allowed him, for among the rugged humps and shoulders above him he saw plainly a path or road. It climbed like a rising girdle from the west, and wound snake-like about the mountain, until before it went round out of view it reached the foot of the cone upon its eastern side. Sam could not see the course immediately above him, where it was lowest, for a steep slope went up from where he stood, but he guessed that if he could only struggle on just a little further way up, they would strike this path. A gleam of hope returned to him. They might conquer the mountain yet. "Why, it might have been put there a purpose," he said to himself. "If it wasn't there, I'd have to say I was beaten in the end." The path was not put there for the purposes of Sam.
So you
A mild
say.
understatement. He did not know it, but he was looking at Sauron's road from Barad-dûr to the Samath Naur, the Chambers of Fire. Out from the dark tower's huge western gate it came over a deep abyss by a vast bridge of iron, and then passing into the plain it ran for a league between two smoking chasms, and so reached a long sloping causeway that led up onto the mountain's eastern side. Thence, turning and encircling all its wide girth from south to north, it climbed at last high in the upper cone, but still far from the reeking summit, to a dark entrance that gazed back east, straight to the window of the eye in Sauron's shadow-mantled fortress. Often blocked or destroyed by the tumults of the mountain's furnaces, always that road was repaired and cleared again by the labors of countless orcs. Sam drew a deep breath.
Sauron did not do any such thing. Don't lie.
He does not currently breathe because eyes don't have lungs.
I mean, if you say so.
I mean, I hope so. I don't know.
Okay, I'm trying to make Tolbrandir not look like a penis, and it keeps getting worse.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Here, we'll just make a little tiny penis.
Is that better? I don't know if that's okay. Let's see. Sam drew a deep breath. There was a path, but how he was to get up the slope to it he did not know. First he must ease his aching back. He lay flat beside Frodo for a while. Neither spoke. Slowly the light grew. Suddenly a sense of urgency which he did not understand came to Sam. It was almost as if he had been called. Now, now, or it will be too late. He braced himself and got up. Frodo also seemed to have felt the call. He struggled to his knees. I'll crawl, Sam, he gasped. So foot by foot, like small gray insects, they crept up the slope. They came to the path and found that it was broad, paved with broken rubble and beaten ash. Frodo clambered onto it, and then moved as if by some compulsion. He turned slowly to face the east. Far off the shadows of Sauron hung, but torn by some gust of wind out of the world, or else moved by some great disquiet within. Mantling clouds swirled, and for a moment drew aside. And then he saw, rising blacker and darker than the vast shades amid which it stood, the cruel pinnacles and iron crown of the topmost tower of Barad-dûr. One moment only it stared out, but as from some great window immeasurably high there stamped northward a flame of red, a flicker of a piercing eye. And then the shadows were furled again, and the terrible vision was removed. The eye had not turned to them. It was gazing north to where the captains of the west stood at bay, and thither all its malice was now bent, as the power moved to strike its deadly blow. But Frodo at that dreadful glimpse fell as one stricken mortally. His hand sought the chain about his neck. Sam knelt by him. Faintly, almost inaudibly, he heard Frodo whispering, Help me, Sam. Help me, Sam. Hold my hand. I can't stop it. Sam took his master's hands and laid them together, palm to palm, and kissed them. And then he held them gently between his own. The thought came suddenly to him. He's spotted us. It's all up, or it soon will be. Now, Sam Gamgee, this is the end of ends. Again he lifted Frodo and drew his hands down to his own breast, letting his master's legs dangle. Then he bowed his head and struggled off along the climbing road. It was not as easy a way to take as it had looked at first. By fortune, the fires that had poured forth in the great turmoils when Sam stood upon Cirith Ungol had flowed down mainly on the southern and western slopes. The road on this side was not blocked. Yet in many places it had crumbled away or was crossed by gaping rents. After climbing eastward for some time, it bent back upon itself at a sharp angle and went westward for a space. There at the bend it was cut deep through a crag of old weathered stone, once long ago vomited from the mountain's furnaces. Panting under his load, Sam turned the bend, and even as he did so, he had a glimpse of something falling from the crag, like a small piece of black stone that had toppled off as he passed. A sudden weight smote him, and he crashed forward, tearing the backs of his hands that still clasped his master's. Then he knew what had happened, for above him as he lay, he heard a hated voice. Wicked master, it hissed. Wicked master cheats us, cheats Smeagol Gollum. He mustn't go that way. He mustn't hurt Precious. Give it to Smeagol, yes, give it to us. Give it to us. With a violent heave, Sam rose up. At once he drew his sword, but he could do nothing. Gollum and Frodo were locked together. Gollum was tearing at his master, trying to get at the chain and the ring. This was probably the only thing that could have roused the dying embers of Frodo's heart and will. An attack, an attempt to wrest his treasure from him by force. He fought back with a sudden fury that amazed Sam, and Gollum also. Even so, things might have gone far otherwise if Gollum himself had remained unchanged. But whatever dreadful paths, lonely and hungry and waterless, he had trodden, driven by a devouring desire and a terrible fear, they had left grievous marks on him. He was a lean, starved, haggard thing, all bones and tight-drawn sallow skin. A wild light flamed in his eyes, but his malice was no longer matched by his old griping strength. Frodo flung him off and rose up, quivering. Down, down, he gasped, clutching his hand to his breast, so that beneath the cover of his leather shirt he clasped the ring. Down, you creeping thing, and out of my path. Your time is at an end. You cannot betray me or slay me now. Then suddenly, as before under the eaves of the Emyn Muil, Sam saw these two rivals with other vision. A crouching shape, scarcely more than the shadow of a living thing, a creature now wholly ruined and defeated, yet filled with a hideous lust and rage. And before it stood stern, untouchable now by pity, a figure robed in white. And at its breast it held a wheel of fire. Out of the fire there spoke a commanding voice. Begone, and trouble me no more. If you touch me ever again, you shall be cast yourself into the fire of doom.
I mean, does it count as foreshadowing if it's 2 pages away?
I have read some interesting discussions about that being the only time Frodo ever actually uses the ring is to cast this curse on Gollum.
Right. That makes sense. Because it's got him now, although we don't find that out for 2 more pages either.
Yes.
Sorry, listeners. Spoilers.
Yes. Yes, I'm sure anyone who's been listening to us for the last 3 years has definitely been doing it because they don't know what happens. We are probably going to get to right about 3 years, by the way.
It's true. Oh, and then we'll have to figure out something else. But not yet.
But not yet.
However, I do believe that it's 8 o'clock.
It's actually a few minutes past 8, but we're like 2 paragraphs from a break, so let's get there.
All right, we'll get to the break.
The crouching shape backed away, terror in its blinking eyes, and yet at the same time, insatiable desire. Then the vision passed, and Sam saw Frodo standing, hand on breast, his breath coming in great gasps, and Gollum at his feet, resting on his knees with his wide-splayed hands upon the ground. Look out! Cried Sam. He'll spring! He stepped forward, brandishing his sword. Quick, master, he gasped. Go on, go on. No time to lose. I'll deal with him. Go on. Frodo looked at him, as if at one now far away. Yes, I must go on, he said. Farewell, Sam. This is the end at last. On Mount Doom, doom shall fall. Farewell. He turned and went on, walking slowly but erect up the climbing path.
Even when you think you're 5 minutes from your frickin' death, you're going to go ahead and be poetic about it. I fucking love you, Frodo.
Well, I mean, what are you going to do? Not be poetic about it? Boring.
Right. Yeah, no. I wish I could come up with anything half as clever as On Mount Doom, doom shall fall. Details at 11. Sorry, was that the break?
That was the break, yes.
Oh, okay. Those are really short paragraphs. Well, let me get the sky uncovered here. Bloop. And then I have this piece of sealed stuff so that I can put these down and keep them, because once the sky is painted, I'll just cover it up again so I can do the stonework.
Smart.
I just have to make sure it's really, really, really dry before I cover it, because otherwise the tape, like you saw it peeling up little bits around the edges.
Mm-hmm.
That's inevitable. But if I put the tape on when it's wet, it'll peel off the whole thing. The whole face will just go.
Yeah.
That's how I know.
I suspect I know how you know.
All right.
All right.
All right. I don't have any weird plans for next weekend. Not that my weird plans for this weekend panned out, but you know, I shall. Where the hell? Oh, okay. Oh, and one more piece of very exciting news.
Yes.
Do you know? Can you guess how far I've gotten on the write-ups for this science?
I cannot guess. How far have you gotten?
Thorium. It's like 90. Like, I'm on the last leg. And with these last ones, the second paragraph that I've been putting uses in is just going to be like, there are no uses, or nuclear medicine used to treat certain cancers. That's it. Like, it's going to go a lot faster. So
Uses kills you very fast.
it doesn't actually exist, and things that don't exist have no uses. Yeah, so it's not impossible that I could be done like within the next couple days.
Yee!
It'd be,
Congrats!
yeah, I'm hoping. And it might be another few days after that. It might be one more week, but like a week tops. That would be kind of weird, actually, for it to be a whole week. But I am so close. I'm so
You're so close.
so close.
Huzzah.
Huzzah! I love you.
I love you too.
Cuidado.
Liamas.